For as long as I can remember, I have been a practitioner. That is, somebody who has a consistent and ongoing daily practice that they come back to regardless of the other circumstances in their life. And they anchor in that place to help them move through life in a better way. And this started off when I was really, really young. I remember when I was just a kid going to martial arts class and practicing Taekwondo. That eventually evolved into weapons training, into magical practice with my grandmother, into meditation, into parkour, and into ancestral nutrition, and then into alchemy, and on the story goes. I have been playing with practice for a really long time. It's one of the longest standing themes in my life. And there were times in my life where I was literally obsessed with practice. And I have notebooks that are literally full to the brim, multiple notebooks. I have suitcases at one point of notebooks of me writing down practices. And it's kind of comical because my wife makes fun of me for having dozens of these notebooks. Now, these days, I don't really do that quite as much. The practices have been deeply internalized, and I follow an inner compass. And I have a broader framework that is really adaptable and fluid, and that is also consistent and stable, that allows me to make continuous progress in all the different areas that I want to. One of the things that people come to me the most for is to understand how to have better practices, because the practice is the way forward. A lot of us who really want to create significant change in our lives don't realize often that what we need to do is find systems and orientations and practices that we can put into place that can direct the flow of change in the direction that we are seeking. The thing is, the change is a constant. It's always ongoing, and we are always, in a sense, training, because everything we do has a conditioning-based impact. If you sit on the couch for 4 or 5 hours a day, your body begins to adapt to that. It'll literally shape itself to take on a couch-like structure and to make it easy for you to sit on the couch. If you're a person who, for example, is making decisions in their life based off of fear, based off of the areas in our overall being that are contracted, then what you're doing is reinforcing the pathways of fear. You're literally training fear. If, when you show up to do an actual movement practice, let's say, you're doing it in a way that's intense, that's harsh, that's pushing, that's willful, then even though you're getting a training effect, you're also practicing those skills. You're learning how to navigate the world with those principles in mind. This extends from the micro of an individual practice to the macro of the overall rhythm and orientation of your life. At some level, we are always practicing, whether we realize it or not. We are reinforcing something, or we are dissolving something. We are making something easier, or we are moving our system away from it. This is an inescapable aspect of life. The reason that a personal practice is so critical and so important is because it is an opportunity for us to actually instill into the overall fabric of our life a very particular signal. It allows us to send in a type of impact, a wave that ripples out throughout the whole of our lives, and that can help shift who we are and where we are going in a particular direction. Now, one of the big secrets about this is that if you don't do this for yourself, the world will do it to you. A practice becomes a place that we can return to on a consistent basis, where we can exert a very clear power, where we have the ability to actually choose what we want our life to look like. Even in that moment, we can show up and we can say, I want to experience more flow in my life. So I'm going to take this hour and get into flow state. Or I want a life that is more mindful, so I'm going to sit down and I'm going to meditate. Or I want a life that is more aligned with my ancestors. So I'm going to sit down at their shrine and give offerings. And even though we can't necessarily control the outcome, we can exert an influence. And because our whole being and the whole fabric of our life is linked together like one unified tapestry, as we pull on these varying threads, we change the overall shape of the structure in question. And then that structure changes in response to its connection to the larger web. So, really, having a daily practice is one of the key elements to a more fulfilling life for so many different reasons. Not only that, but the world in and of itself is consistently imposing upon you any number of variables and influences and impacts. So, unconsciously, whether you realize it or not, you are being shaped. And if you don't take the ability that you have to exert some of this shaping influence on yourself, then you're going to be swaying in the wind with no anchor. It's one of the few places that we can really work some serious magic because it allows us in many ways to create a type of enchantment, as it were, in order to create an effect that moves through the overall theme of our life. A lot of us don't think about practice in that way, but think about it like this, that if you know that what you need in your life for it to move in the direction that you want is to have a deeper sense of self-love, that means that you can create practices or you can orientate to existing practices in a way that flavor them with more self-love, the ability to nourish yourself, the ability to take care of your needs. And so then that injects into the overall framework, the overall web of your totality, more self-love. Now the web itself begins to shape and mold, and the tensional wires between it start to shift to create a different structure. For me, a devotional daily practice has been one of the things that I have come back to consistently, regardless of what was going on in my life. When I was really sick and really unhealthy, that ability to show up and do work regardless of how I was feeling kept me anchored, it kept me stable, it kept me connected to hope, because I knew that even though I was falling apart, that I was doing something about it, that I could anchor, that I could find stability, that regardless of what was going on, I could exert a little bit of influence, a little bit of power into my life. And consistently, one of the things that I see are the people who actually get things moving in the direction that they want, the people who make real change happen for them, are the ones who develop daily practices, are the ones that anchor in the actual doing of something. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. Personal practices can be really challenging to set up, especially if you haven't had one at first. And there are multiple degrees of this challenge. There is the challenge of getting started, and then there is the challenge of being shaped, and the ability for us to let go of the aspects of us that are resistant to the new shape. So, for example, if you're a person who feels weak and victimized, let's say, which has no judgment in me saying that, only to point out a particular thread that is very common these days, and you start to do a practice that flies in the face of that, such as martial arts or a certain type of strength training, then at some point that identity that you have built around that person being weak and incapable is going to be challenged. And usually that can be really uncomfortable to let that go and take on this new personality, this new identity. So in that way, training, and it has for me always been, and for anyone who is seriously moving forward with a consistent daily practice, a crucible and a sanctuary. A place that we can exert influence, a place where we can organize our being more in the ways that we would hope it to be, a place where we can discover more of who we truly are, as well as a place that makes us consistently uncomfortable and that calls us to our edge on a consistent basis.